there.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the July 1st, 2014 meeting of the Abingdon Town Council. This is our organizational meeting, which we hold every other year following the May election cycle. You'll note a little bit of a different format to the agenda. We're going to take care of the organizational business first and then move into the regular agenda. We'd like to ask that you please turn off your cell phones, or at least make them quiet so that they don't disrupt the meeting. There's a packet of information over here to the left if you want to take a look at the, follow the agenda and the attachments that are on it. At this time, I'm going to call the roll for the council members. Mrs. Dury. Here. Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Humphreys.
Here.
Mrs. Lowe.
Here.
And Mr. Morgan.
Here.
And to get things started, I'm going to ask Chief Tony Sullivan to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first order of business this morning on the agenda is the election of the mayor. So I'm going to open the floor for nominations for mayor.
Yes, I would like to nominate Edward Morgan for mayor.
Second.
All right, we have a nomination and a second. Do I hear any other nominations for mayor? Any other nominations?
Is there a call for discussion on this, though? Is there a discussion part to it?
Yes.
Good. Whenever you're there, I do have something.
I'm there.
Okay. I thought you might be. As we've discussed before, and I would like to just interject this as a food for thought, we had talked about rotating the mayor and doing this in intervals, very much like Bristol does. It looks like it's very successful. It doesn't put too much pressure. And also gives administrative experience at being mayor to a lot of the council members, probably double or triple what our normal what the way we give them that we do. So, I would just interject that sometime along the way, maybe this next year, that we discuss this and decide to see if it's something that people would like to do. We do have, I know that we have coming up appointments, and on every committee, we have a time limit on those committees. And so mayor might be the same, we might want to work it the same way, whether, we have a 1 or 2 term or whatever, or two-year period, or even a 1-year period, and then we swap off some. That's all my discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other comments? Okay, I'm going to declare the floor closed for nominations for mayor. We have a nomination for Ed Morgan with a motion by Mr. Humphreys and a second by Mr. Howard. And I'm going to call the roll. Mrs. Dury? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor? Mr. Morgan?
Aye. Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is election of a vice mayor, and I'll open the floor for nominations for vice mayor.
Madam Clerk, I'd like to nominate Kathy Lowe to serve as vice mayor.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Morgan with a second by Mr. Humphreys to nominate Mrs. Lowe as vice mayor. Do I hear any other nominations? Is there any discussion? Nothing? Okay. I'm going to call the roll. Mrs. Dury? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, we have a mayor and a vice mayor. And the next appointment, I think that Mayor Morgan, we discussed it if we're going to move I'm going to move forward with the other nominations.
Yes, if you'll handle this portion of the meeting, please, and I'll take over the regular session.
Okay. The next one is going to be the appointment of the town manager. And I will open the floor for nominations for town manager.
I'd like to nominate Gregory W. Kelly.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? All right, I'll call the roll. Mrs. Dury? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
All right. This next one's near and dear to my heart. Appointment of the town clerk. Do I hear nominations for appointment of the town clerk?
I'd like to nominate Cecile Rosenbaum to serve as town clerk.
I'll second that.
Yay.
All right.
Is there any discussion?
Well.
Of the nominees?
Yes, I'll call the roll. Mrs. Jury? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
All right, and we will move next to the town treasurer, and I'll open up the floor for nominations for town treasurer.
I'd like to nominate Mark Godby.
I'll second that.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, Mrs. Deering? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
All right, and next is going to be the appointment of the town attorney, and I will open up the floor for nominations for town attorney.
I'd like to nominate Deb Eisenhower.
I'll second that.
Forgive me, I'm writing. Okay, any discussion?
I think that's Deborah C. Eisenhower.
Yes, Deborah C. Eisenhower.
Yeah.
All right, I'll call the roll. Mrs. Deering? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
All right, and let's see, the next thing on the list is the appointment of the officers for the Abingdon Fire Department. And I think we can do both of those in one motion, so I'll open up the floor for nominations for the fire department.
I'd like to nominate current Chief John McCormick and his current Assistant Chief C.J. McLaughlin to this position.
I'll second that.
All right, is there any discussion? I'll call the roll. Mrs. Deering? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
All right, and next, I don't have your agenda. I'm looking over your shoulder here. Okay, next we have appointment of council members to serve on several of our boards and commissions. The first one is going to be the Abingdon Planning Commission, and because of our 2-year limit to serve, Mr. Howard has served 2 terms and is now not eligible for reappointment on the Planning Commission. So I will open the floor for whoever wants to serve on the Planning Commission.
Look at that smile on his face.
It is my understanding that Mr. Humphries has expressed a strong interest in serving on that committee, and I would therefore like to nominate him for that position.
Second.
All right, any discussion? I'll call the roll. Mrs. Deering? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
All right, and next is going to be the Board of Architectural Review. I understand that we do have a name change on that, but I think it's going to have to be approved officially by the council, so I'm going to try to put that on the August meeting, and we'll get that taken care of. Mrs. Deering was appointed to fill Jason's unexpired term and is definitely eligible for reappointment to another term for the BAR.
I'd like to place a nomination of Jane for that position.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? I'll call the roll. Mrs. Deering? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
All right, and next comes Mount Rogers Planning District Commission. Mrs. Lowe has served 2 terms on that commission, so I think you all have maybe discussed who was going to take that one.
I would be.
Except for this letter is a little bit, it says that I am eligible for reappointment.
Well, if I can comment, I think that is you're eligible as far as their rules are concerned.
Oh.
Our rules are the 2-term limit, so I don't know how you all want to handle
They
that.
only have 1 meeting, 2 meetings a year, so
Oh,
it's not a
okay,
big
so-
deal.
And I said that I would
Yeah.
like to serve on that if I can.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'll need a motion for that, please.
I'll nominate Rick Humphries to serve on the Mount Rogers Planning District Commission.
Second. Second.
All right.
Okay, so Rick's going to be Mount Rogers Planning District, and any discussion?
Just a little bit. One of the things in doing that, I would like to do that, and then Bob is, of course, chair of the next one coming up, District 3 Governmental Cooperative, and I would like to, if we could have another alternate for Bob instead of me as alternate on the next one as we move into that, then I would like to serve on the Mount Rogers Planning District Commission. Bob is very diligent, as we all know, and as far as I know, has not missed any meetings, and I have never had to attend a District 3 meeting. So anyway, thank you, Bob.
I was thinking about
for
doing so.
for mothballing me.
All right.
Okay, we're done with the Mount Rogers Planning District. We'll move on to District 3 Governmental Cooperative.
We didn't
vote.
Oh, sorry, yes, you do need to vote.
No.
All right, back to Mount Rogers Planning District Commission. We have a motion by Mrs. Lowe, a second by Mrs. During to place Rick Humphreys on that committee. And I'll call the roll. Ms. During?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
And Mayor Morgan.
Aye.
All right. Now, District 3 Governmental Cooperative.
I have served on that, and I would like to nominate Mrs. During to serve as the backup for Mr. Howard on that, or should a motion reflect Mr. Howard being renominated?
I think you can do one motion that will take care of the person and the backup.
I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Bob Howard to the District 3 Governmental Cooperative as our representative, and with Ms. Jane During to serve as his backup or alternate.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll call the roll. Mrs. During?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye.
And I will happily turn this portion of the meeting over to Mayor Morgan.
All righty. Thank you very much, and I'll have to say, first of all, that Mayor Morgan is not good and awake yet today, but I do want to thank my fellow council members and our staff, first of all, for the confidence you've shown in me, and secondly, for allowing me to be of service to our town. And I'm hopeful that we will have a very good year ahead of us. We have folks that want to work together, want to serve, want to improve the town, and I don't think we could ask for a much better council or staff than we have right now. And thank you for everyone for the service that you do for our community. That being said, the next item we have on our agenda is the approval of minutes. Council, we have the work session meeting and the regular meeting minutes from June 2nd, 2014. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be made to these minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask what your pleasure is regarding these.
Make a motion they be approved as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll.
Mrs. During?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphreys?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, and we have a second reading of an ordinance. I think Mrs. Eisenhower is here. I'll ask her to remind us briefly of what this ordinance is about. It's an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, to repeal, amend, and reenact Appendix B, zoning ordinance, Article 3B2, General Business District of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members, this is the second reading of the ordinance to add an additional special use section under Town of Abingdon Ordinance B2 zoning as 11-2-3, and adds, I think, 5 words: kennels, animal boarding, and grooming to that special use.
Okay.
As a special use, once the ordinance is in effect, any B2 property owner will be required to appear before the Planning Commission to obtain a special use permit prior to proceeding pursuant to the ordinance. This matter came before the Planning Commission at its May meeting and was approved and recommended to Council. Council adopted the amendment following the public hearing at the June 2nd meeting. As such, the amendment to this ordinance allowing for kennels, animal boarding, and grooming as a special use in the B2 zoning will become effective as it stands on August 1, 2014. And I believe Mr. Kelly has a recommendation here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as Ms. Eisenhower has indicated, this is just a zoning change to allow for a special use permit. The individuals who have initiated this request for change in ordinance will now have to go back before the Planning Commission for an additional public hearing to obtain a special use permit and then come back yet one more time before council for a public hearing for the special use permit. So to expedite this, otherwise it's going to wind up taking about 6 months, I would request that if the council chooses to adopt this ordinance on second reading, that the effective date be today rather than laying over for 30 days to expedite their ability to apply for the special use permit.
Okay, thank you. So in other words, the ordinance we're looking at on the second reading would permit such an activity to be considered or possible as a special use and not an automatic possibility. And as I understand it, you're saying there's still several steps that would be involved, and we have had the first reading on this. I would entertain a motion regarding this matter and perhaps including the implementation of the ordinance if it's our pleasure to approve on today's date. And enact.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve on the second reading an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon to repeal, amend, and reenact Appendix B zoning ordinance, Article 3, B2, General Business District of the Code, ordinances of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, and make that effective July the 1st, 2014.
Second your motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve and reenact the ordinance effective July 1st, 2014. Is there any further discussion or questions?
The only discussion I would maybe suggest is that we, in the body of that, maybe have an amendment to include the 5 words that are not listed here as we made the motion. It's not listed in the motion.
Okay, you'll have to remind me which are the 5 words.
5 words are kennels,
animal boarding, and grooming.
Okay.
I would amend that motion.
Two.
You understand what we're doing, ma'am? Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye, thank you very much. Okay, and that brings us to, under reports from the town manager, consideration of a date for council to tour town departments. I believe it's been several years since we've gotten on the bus and made the rounds.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, every 2 years we do that, so
Yeah.
it's been 2 years since we last did that. We now have a new member to the Abingdon Town Council, and while I think I've had the opportunity to take Jane to some of those places, it might be good that we all load up and go again and see exactly what goes on within the various departments of the town. If you will recall from past events, this generally takes a full day to be able to do this, and it's ordinary that we would provide lunch at some point here at the town hall, have it catered in. So I would request that council provide us with some dates when they would be willing to do that. We'll line up the bus and we'll correspond with various departments and get everything set up to go.
All right, do we want to look at possible dates at this point in time, or?
If you guys are ready, I would say now is as good a time as any.
All righty. Okay, my schedule is usually fairly straightforward, and I can do what I need to work it in. We're not going to be out of town much. What is your preference, Mr. Kelly? Would we do this in July or August, or?
It could be either done in, my guess would be probably the 3rd or the 4th week of July. It might be good to do it before the next council meeting, but if not, we can certainly go over into August. I think traditionally we've tried to do it in July.
Okay.
We have a work session, 16th, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. We have a work session. Is there a possibility to do it any time between now and the 10th?
From my scheduling standpoint, there would be. We have the new, we have to go to Richmond with Jane for the new council member
10th and 11th.
training on the 10th and 11th.
And the 8th is out for me, but the 7th or 9th could be, I could work that out.
I'm not sure that Susan and I have to go to Richmond sometime in that time before Anna has her baby, and it's due on the 20th, so she's only in this next 2 weeks, so I've got a feeling that we're going to have to go. The answer to my question is probably not on that one. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. So you're looking at the week of the 20th through the 26th, or the 27th through August the 1st?
Yeah.
What about this, no, is the 16th out?
16th is a work session day.
Well, what I was getting at was we could sort of make a day of it.
That would,
No, that's a lot of togetherness.
That would kill 5 birds with one stone.
Yeah, you know, if we were still speaking to each other, you know it.
That's fine with me. I've got that day
I
already
could do
scheduled.
the 16th.
All right. Okay, and we'll figure out the particulars a little bit from here. So that would be on the 16th. Okay. All right, very good. Well, that was surprisingly easy. Okay, so we have a consideration of a date. We have no resolutions. At this time, we'll entertain matters that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone here present that wishes to bring a matter before the council's attention? Okay, hearing none.
You want to say that one more time? Would you mind saying that one more time?
Well, I will say it one more time. If there's anybody here that wishes to bring a matter before the council's attention at the present time, they're welcome to come forward. All right, I don't see anybody that wishes to do that. We have no appointments to boards and committees on the agenda this afternoon. Now, as I understand it, Madam Clerk, we have advertised for the Housing Commission,
Yes,
and that would be officially on the August agenda?
yes, sir.
Okay, they're quite anxious to have some appointments. Have we had people to apply, or have there already been applications?
Council had received 2 applications for the board that were on the April and May agenda, if I'm
All
not
right.
mistaken. Those 2 folks are still in the running, and I have not received any further applications. So, it's still open until July I think it's the 25th.
Okay,
Right. And there are 2 positions
all right,
as it stands right now.
okay.
That's what I advertised.
Mr. Mayor, I've spoken with, and I think several people on the council have spoken with Dan Smith, who's the chairman of that commission, and Robin Smeltzer, and they both approached me on Friday night, and asked me, they said that Al Bradley was their choice, who was one of the applicants, and asked that we go ahead and appoint him. They are struggling with their quorum. So if no one objects, I would like to nominate Al Bradley to serve on the Housing Authority.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
All right, so in other words, we would make, say,
Just that.
one appointment now, and then we would continue to take it, review the applications at our August meeting, and make an appointment from there. Would that be appropriate? Have we?
I'll re-advertise and have it go out as one more seat to fill on that committee.
Okay, all right, if that won't make too much of a problem. Now, we have a motion and a second, if I recall, to nominate Mr. Al Bradley to serve on the Abingdon Planning Commission, or, excuse me, on the Abingdon Housing Authority. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerring?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, and that brings us to council member reports. Mr. Humphrey, I believe you have something there.
Actually, I have a couple things I didn't realize I did. First of all, I wanted to draw council's attention to the Abingdon Tree Commission. You received a hard copy. And the Tree Commission's been doing a lot of things. And as you remember, we did the Abingdon Tree Initiative and basically targeted the Country Club area and Country Club Estates area. It was so devastated and hit by the tornado of now 3 years ago. And when we first started, we only had, I think it was like 1 taker, and I just wanted to the very last page, as you'll see, I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had 9 participants this time who received money to put in a tree that was appropriate to the position, to the power lines of the house. And so this is now an initiative that is bringing forth, fruit. I don't think there's any fruit trees, but anyway. Just wanted to call the attention that the council took action on this, and it now is something that looks like it's really taking off. And now they're going to be targeting other areas in the town, an area per year, to be able to reimburse them for tree plantings up to, I think it's $75.
Very good.
So, first one. Second one was, anyone that didn't see yesterday's paper, I wanted to call everybody's attention to the front page of the annual paper, which was history lesson, and the second, the full-blown bunch of full-page color ads, and this is concerning Fairview and the tractor association that is taking over a lot of the plantings, the sowing, and obviously now the reaping of the harvest, to show and demonstrate different types of tractors and steam-powered equipment, and we'll be doing so with many tractors on July the 24th through the 26th at Fairview Homestead on Hillman Highway. In the meantime, they have donated, and please forgive me because I'm not going to be able to tell you what it is, but over 150 pounds of produce to the Feeding America. So they've been able to already put food on the table, fresh food on the table for a number of families. And so, of course, this just goes right along with what they did last year, and what makes it such a good dovetail with the town to be able to give to back to our community through through a local museum. So.
Very good. I think Ms. Gibson has slipped out of here, but it was a very nice piece that she put together for that, and it's a pleasure to see these kinds of activities happening at Fairwood. It's really sort of, who knows? I told you it was early. Fairview, Hartwood, who knows?
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, we don't always have all the people we have here.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see a lot of people we don't have here, and a lot of times we only tell people like Ann Newman how beautiful the flowers are and how good they look. Lynn Foster, how clean the sewers run and how fast they are. And many of you that Jamie Public Works, that Jamie works tirelessly to try to keep all the cars moving and all of us moving. And so these people that we don't get to see often, a lot of them we do. Kevin we see, John we see, CJ we see, Chief we see, but just to thank them for all they do for us.
Well, thank you, and we hope you'll join us for breakfast here in a little while. I have a suspicion that was at least part of the incentive to bring everybody out today. But thank you for coming. Yes, ma'am.
Fairview did donate, we worked it out. We had 45 or 47 bales of straw that they gave to me.
Oh, that worked well, too.
So we got them packed away.
And just a comment about fresh produce and people who are food insecure. There's been a lot of attention in urban areas about food deserts within urban areas where you cannot get any fresh produce, and that's not dissimilar to our rural area. When you're poor, you can't afford the produce. So having that, and working at Mountain Mission School, I know how precious having fresh fruits and vegetables really are and what a difference they make. Yeah. So I think anything that provides fresh produce to people who are food insecure is a great program.
Yeah, I agree. Ann, did you mention the pumpkins?
They're growing us some pumpkins.
All right.
Yeah, they're growing pumpkins, and I said, now who he's going to go to, and Ron Sims looked at me, of course he's got a big deep voice, and he goes, they're for you all, man. And so obviously we're going to have some pumpkins, hopefully if they grow. And we've had certainly quite a bit of rain, so hopefully we'll have some nice pumpkins to go out on the street.
Well, they should keep in mind that there is the mayor's prize for the largest pumpkin grown, and presented to the farmers market. There is some distance of how far from town, but they're well within, there. And, the prize that is given for that has been from the mayor's discretionary fund, $1 a pound for the largest pumpkin, up to a maximum of 1,000 pounds, which would be a $1,000 prize. So if they could crank out a super big pumpkin over there, they could win up to $1,000 for their, for their organization, as well as having a very fine pumpkin we could set out in front of Town Hall. And so remind them that they would be eligible to participate in that contest. You know, so far I've not, I think I've had to give out $400 one year or something like that, but, you know, there's room to produce a pumpkin.
I think that, and that didn't include the hernia surgery that we all had to have, trying to get off trying to get that one off the back of the truck, and I tried to roll it over on.
Yeah, it's a process to get those rascals off there without any injuries to either the participants or the pumpkin itself. Well, very good. Well, it's a great thing that's happening. Anything else you've got?
No, that's it. Thank you, sir, for entertaining me.
Oh, thank you. It's, again, it's a pleasure to see these things happening out there. It's just the kind of thing we've been looking for that facility for a long time, and it seems they've really found a good niche with that, and I couldn't be more pleased. And I'm also very pleased that they are producing corn there that is being ground at White's Mill and will be available various places around here. Previously, the White's Mill Foundation had been purchasing its corn from Kentucky, of all places, and, you know, now we have it grown here where it should be.
And also, they will be providing a mixed corn, kind of an Indian corn, mixed corn to Harvest Table. And
Right.
so that's to help underwrite some of their other purchases they have to have for seeds and things like that, sets and seeds.
Very good. All righty, thank you. Vice Mayor Lowe.
No, sir.
Okay.
Morning.
All righty, Mr. Howard.
I don't believe I have anything. I do appreciate being reelected this term. Continue to work to improve the town.
Very good, sir. Mrs. During.
And I just want to thank you for all the work you do that makes this job such a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to serving with my first elected term and learning from you. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. And, you know, I don't have a whole lot to add this morning, which is probably a blessing to everybody. And I would point out that there are a series of events that several folks here are going to be, on our staff, are going to be actively involved with. And we thank you for what you're going to do to make July 4th in this town a very nice place. The town looks good, thanks to our horticultural department. And we have great events happening at the Coombs Center on the first of all, there'll be First Thursday here in Abingdon, followed on the 4th by the Coombs Recreation Center events, swimming, music, family fun. The town offices will be closed on July the 4th. And then we have the Red White Beach Party featuring Blackwater Rhythm and Blues Band that will be on the 5th. Boy, it's going to be quite a good weekend here, you know, in town when you look at what we've got lined up so far. On the 8th, Barter will give, Barter's Inside the Actors Studio, Michael Poison will give, I guess, a lecture and a reading. On the 10th, Thursday Jams featuring the Bronze Radio will be back here. On the 10th, the Crooked Road Jam at Hartwood Center. The 17th, the Thursday Jams, and also at the Crooked Road, and the list goes on. There's a lot of events here. And finally, we will culminate with the opening of Virginia Highlands Festival on August 1st. And that is all that I have noted. Is there, yes, sir?
Mr. Mayor, if I might take just a few moments, I'd like to...
And forgive me for overlooking you, sir. I'm in the spirit of things here this morning.
That's quite all right. You know, it's early in the morning, so perhaps I'll be able to get through this without showing a whole lot of emotion. But I do want to thank you all for reappointing me once more as town manager. I really try hard with this group that's sitting out here to do what's in the best interest of the town of Abingdon. And I've always deemed this to be a team effort, and, you know, at staff meetings we always push to promote the team effort. And I want both the council and the staff to hear this at this time, is that I've always viewed this as not them and us, but we're all on the same team together trying to accomplish things that are for the best interest of the town of Abingdon. Thanks to you all, you give me the tools to be able to do some great things, and thanks to these folks, great things happen within the town of Abingdon. I also want to thank everyone, town council, town staff, for all of your acts of kindness and support during the loss of my father. I can't express how important that was to me in getting through that. He was a very close man to me, huge influence in my life, and it's still very difficult, but I'm going to get through, and your all's support has made that a much easier task to do. I want to tell you a little brief story, if I could, that just tells about what a wonderful place the town of Abingdon is. The first thing I want to say is my father came here in 1962. He came here as a pauper, basically. His first trip down Main Street in Abingdon was on foot. He couldn't afford a car. And so he hitchhiked from Clintwood to Abingdon to get a job here in Abingdon. He was lucky enough to get a job, but I'll tell you this, and he may roll over in his grave now and haunt me for saying this, but he had to lie to get his job. And one of the requirements of being on the Abingdon Police Department at that time was you had to live in the town limits. And my father could not afford to live here because he had not received his first paycheck as of yet. So here's a man who was hitchhiking back and forth from Clintwood every day for it was going to be his first 2 weeks. He would catch a ride with the mailmen and various people making deliveries for that 2 week, or for close to that 2 week period of time. This shows what a great community Abingdon has. One day as he was walking down Main Street to go out to get on Route 19, he passed by a car dealership that was down next to the liquor store or gas station. I can't remember, but it was owned and run by a person many of us are familiar with in Abingdon, Arthur Patton. And Arthur saw my dad and said, "You're new to the town, aren't you?" And he said, "Yes, sir, I am. I'm a new police officer." And he says, "Well, where are you living?" And he says, "Well, I don't have a place to live yet." And he says, "Well, what are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I'm thumbing my way back to Clintwood until I can get my first paycheck, and then I'm going to get an apartment here." Arthur recognized just how difficult that was, and he reached in his pocket and produced $100, and he gave it to my father, and he says, "You go and get an apartment, and you pay me back, not next week, week after next, you pay me back when you're capable of paying me back." And so my dad was able to go down here on Valley Street, the house is no longer here, and rent an apartment from a lady named Miss Caldwell. And was able to carry on a great law enforcement career for 41 years. And his financial situation increased greatly after that moment in time, but he was always grateful for the town of Abingdon for giving him the job. He was grateful for a town citizen for loaning him the money to be able to stay here for all those years. I say that because he came here like a pauper, and his first trip down Main Street in Abingdon was on foot. Well, his last trip down Main Street was like a king. And I really appreciate all that you all did to make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You know, it is a great town, and several of us who were strangers have been welcomed here and given an opportunity. It's very much appreciated. Anything else we want to add here today? I don't think I could add much to that, or should I try?
I just wonder where Arthur Patton got that $100.
And that may be the question that really ought to be asked. All
I
right.
hope my dad did pay him back. He never
Oh, he did, Arthur.
I would say several times.
All right.
Several times.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? As I understand it, there is a breakfast downstairs.
Yes.
Okay.
I hope.
All righty, if the, all are welcome at the table. Thank you for being here this morning.
I know why they showed up.
Yeah. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for all that each of you do for our town, and we're gonna have a good couple years. Thank you. We are adjourned.